Now, almost a week on from the volcanic eruption and tsunami in Tonga, the islands are in desperate need of aid. The first flights have now been able to land, but most aid is being shipped from Australia and New Zealand, a journey of over 3,000 miles. It arrives in Fiji, still 500 miles from Tonga, where the operation is now being coordinated. Now, communication with and across the islands is still a major problem. And one of the worst affected areas is around the capital, Nuku'alofa. From Fiji, though, Greg Milam reports.
So this is Vakaloa.
Barely a week ago, this was a new beach resort. There is no better illustration of how Tonga's landscape has been altered. The images from these Pacific islands tell a story of disaster. Rubble where there was once homes, streets coated with a layer of volcanic ash.
First we thought it was rain, but there were bits and pieces of rocks. And then after the rocks came down, then we had the dust, and we could not see while we're driving.
Marion has been documenting the damage. She's one of the few who's managed to call out with networks disrupted.
We need clean drinking water. Our national water supplies is not safe enough for us to drink.
The focus now is on delivering aid. Shipments of water, tents and food have set off from Australia and New Zealand. It's estimated 80% of Tongans have been affected by the volcano and the tsunami that followed. Whole villages lost on remote islands. Tens of thousands of people in need.
Happy birthday to you.
Stranded by the pandemic in the US, Netta was on the phone to her children back home in Tonga when the waves hit. For 3 days, she didn't know if they'd survived.
It's a huge disaster in Tonga. It's life or death matters. So without hearing them, I was just lost the last few days. I heard the noise and the eruption happening, and I was the one who was telling them they should move to a higher ground, and they did.
The aid has begun to arrive, and Tongans have started to pick up the pieces. There are few places in the world as vulnerable to the extreme forces of nature as the Pacific Islands. These are resilient communities, but for many there's been nothing like this in their lifetime. And for some, the loss has been total. But one of the few places in the world to be COVID-free is determined the rush to help doesn't add a new crisis to the one they're already dealing with. Greg Milam, Sky News, Fiji.
Well, let's go to Fiji now, where we can speak to our correspondent Greg Milam, who's joining us live. Greg, good to have you with us. So what's the latest on the relief effort from there?
Well, some good news at last, which is that the first of those military aircraft has touched down on that runway that they spent so long clearing of volcanic ash. It touched down in the last couple of hours, a C-130, a Hercules from the New Zealand Air Force, carrying, they say, water, shelters, generators, hygiene equipment, communications equipment as well. A C-17 from Australia will be on the ground soon as well. Another one is following with similar emergency supplies. So that is the good news. But just touching on what I said at the end of that report, those missions will be on the ground for about, those planes will be on the ground for about 90 minutes. It's what they call a no-contact mission. They will offload their supplies. No personnel will get off of those aircraft because the government in Tonga is so concerned about the spread of COVID-19. It is largely COVID-free. It has been, apart from one case back in October, and the last thing they want is for an infection wave to come ashore that will add to the problems they're already dealing with. So some negotiations about getting those supplies in. The ships they'll be able to unload as well without personnel coming ashore when those ships arrive in Tonga, probably on Friday. So it's a step forward. There are still lots of negatives, though. That undersea cable that we hear so much about, it will be weeks before the internet is restored to Tonga. As much as the phone lines are coming back up, that is a real concern, and this issue of water as well, and getting healthy supplies of water there. But some positive news at last, but still a long way to go for the people of Tonga.
Absolutely right. OK, Greg, in Fiji for now. Thank you.